Hey guys, I think we're live.
It does
Coming to
say
you
it.
live from the Lead Maine studio. Hey guys, coming to you live from the Lead Maine studio. Got Nick here. We're going to be talking about MaineCare.
Yes.
Talking about MaineCare accountability, or the lack thereof, that we currently have in Maine. And so let's start with the big picture, right? We spend a lot of money. The state government spends a lot of money on MaineCare every year. $1.4 billion.
Billion.
1.4 billion. So one out of every four of Mainers'
State
tax
dollars, yeah.
state dollars, but state dollars are Maine taxpayer dollars, are spent on MaineCare. That's a lot of money.
It's wild.
And so we're going to talk about some instances where perhaps there could have been some greater accountability, pointing
Perhaps.
to why we need more accountability in the system overall. But there was 13 I have to reference my notes here every few minutes because some of these numbers are so crazy. Like, you have to fact check yourself. $13.77 million was billed from one Portland office building from 2019 to 2024. And so we're going to talk about where that money went, how the system failed to catch it, and what the legislature is doing or not doing about it. Nick, why don't you tell folks about 203 Anderson Street
Yeah,
in
it's
Portland?
a great example of the type of Medicaid spending, MaineCare, which is the state's Medicaid program.
So Medicaid, MaineCare, same
That's right.
thing.
That's right.
the main
Medicaid
program.
is a federal program. It's block granted to the states, and MaineCare is what we call our Medicaid program. And yeah, looking into the Mills era, explosion of Medicaid payments. I mean, we had Medicaid expansion shortly after she came into office. This is all part of that. It all contributes to that $1.4 billion we spend today. And so yeah, looking at this one address, I think gives you a good idea of the kind of fraud that we're tracking, and what may be there, may still be there, is 5 agencies at this one address in East Bayside in Portland at 203 Anderson Street, 5 different home health care agencies. And they collectively billed the state almost $14 million over the course of 5 years. Not a small chunk of change. But when they realize when folks realized that there were 5 agencies operating out of one place, we all sort of, it caused our ears to go up and say, okay, what's actually going on here? But you'd be surprised that the state never looked into that. There was never any requirement that somebody go and visit this place to make sure that all of these places are actually operating and that what they're being billed for is appropriate and proper, and they're actually patients on the other end of the line. And so
in fact, look, there are not visits to these sites.
no, they can
to verify that there are indeed agencies there, people working, providing services. The verification doesn't happen. This is just kind of an online process, and now we've got these 5 agencies at one address. We'll talk about another one, 75 Bishop Street, also in Portland, 75 Bishop Street, multiple agencies there. And
That's right.
There's one in particular, 5 stars. I don't know where the 5 stars came from. I don't know if this is did they get rated on Yelp? I don't know. But it's called 5 Stars Home Health, was ordered to repay. This is one of these agencies at one of these multiple agencies at one address places here. This agency was ordered to repay the state. And anytime we say the state, that's Maine taxpayers.
Right.
Ordered to repay the state $400,000.
That's crazy.
$400,000.
That's
How
just
much
one agency.
did they? Yeah, one agency at one of these agencies at one of these multiplex home health agencies at one address.
Yeah, these
How much
issues
did
is
they
that,
actually repay?
I mean, they only repaid about $14,000. And the issue with that is once that sort of came through, they were trying to delay the recoupment, and apparently the CEO has left the country, and the Maine Wire has tracked this in their reporting. But yeah, they got, the state got what, less than 5% of that money back?
The state, the taxpayer.
The taxpayers got less than 5% of that money back before the CEO of this agency dissolved the company and then left the country. And
Well,
so
when
good
it's
luck
so
trying to get that
easy to
back.
just start a new company, you could just apply online, and there's no in-person verification. You might get a phone call maybe, but there's, it's this online process to start and then bill MaineCare. But
That might be why there's multiple agencies at the same
Could
center. I
be.
mean, the Maine Wire reporting has also found that there's interlinked personnel here,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows that these things are related.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be a red flag if agency staff were looking for it.
Right.
I think that's the issue. Like you say, you can just sign up online
Right.
to be a provider and start billing the taxpayers. There's no actual staff that are going to visit your office and verify that you are who you say you are.
There
They
should be.
They can do it by a phone call, but there
should be.
absolutely should be. We
There
agree.
should be. And so, we did name this live, we were talking about ghost agencies. That's what we're
Yes.
talking about here. Ghost agencies, where these agencies pop up. Often, one tell is that there are multiple at one address, and it's hard to track, like, where are employees, where's the employer, and come to find out, here we go, 400,000 billed inappropriately, 14,000 paid back, and then the company goes kaput because it's easy enough to restart if you're doing this process, and Maine taxpayer is now out not 400,000, 386,000 ballpark,
yeah.
which might as well be $400,000. And so the real bottom line here, as we're talking about these ghost agencies and the need for greater accountability in MaineCare, keep in mind, MaineCare, Medicaid, this was created to support the folks who are most at need among us, right? This
That's
is
right.
services for seniors, services for disabled, services for children. And so when you got $400,000 going to an agency who's then just jettisoning from the country, closing the agency and jettisoning as soon as their fraud is found out, that is real people in need missing out on the funding for these services. It's gone.
Usually they have a recoupment process where they go back to these fraudulent providers and get the money back. But if you can just dissolve it and leave the country, then the taxpayers are left holding the bag. And you're right, that hurts those folks who are most vulnerable, who need MaineCare. There's a reason why we have this program in the first place.
So, of course, we need accountability for taxpayers, 100%. But we also need to remember the other victims here, and that is the people who really need these services. And so let's talk about, what does this review process look like? So what is a desk review versus in-person versus a phone call? What does that look like?
I mean, so agency staff are required to at least review these things, but the fact that they can, the bar is low, right? Because the fact that they can do these desk reviews, which is essentially just a phone call, and a staff member from the agency answers the phone call and says, "Yep, we're here. We're doing the stuff. Like, we're all good. Okay, so check the box at the state at DHHS, and there's nothing else that needs to occur to verify that this agency is real enough to continue to bill taxpayers for the services that they get." It seems like you would want a higher level of scrutiny to make sure somebody is doing something appropriately in somewhere where they can actually perform their services before you go and send them millions of dollars in tax dollars. That's why. I mean, the Maine Wire, John Featherston, has showed up to some of these places during the middle of the day, during business hours, ostensibly, at different times, and not found the heat being on, and not found the doors being, open or anything like that. And so there's a lot of really sketchy things that, if the state was actually tracking this and doing this, maybe we could have flagged some of this stuff early on. But thank God we have the Maine Wire to actually check this stuff out and raise the flags for us to follow up.
Yeah, and to be clear, sure, home health agency, maybe we were just out seeing patients. But
I hope so.
But I'm a nurse. I've been in healthcare for a long time. I have friends who work in home health, and when you have a home health agency, there is core staff that has to be manning the office. They are going over books. They are doing the billing. They are doing the scheduling. So to have these companies where there are multiple offices in a building and nobody is ever there, that's just not possible.
Especially if you're bringing in a couple million a year, right?
Yeah.
This one place in 203 Anderson, nearly 14 million over 5 years. That's a good chunk of change. That even if they were sort of aligned on one service center or something, where they vertically integrate and they have the same receptionist and staff for scheduling and all this stuff, maybe that's a smart way to do it. They probably would be there at any point during business hours to do it. I think that's
and that's the beauty of in person. right? In person should be in person. There should be in-person verification before these agencies can bill the state, the taxpayer, for services that they may or may not be providing. And it's a really simple way, isn't it, to verify that someone is who they say they are, is through in-person verification.
Wasn't that what was happening before the pandemic as well?
That was.
It may not have been a requirement, but that was the practice of most of the time. But we have not come back from this pandemic era. We can't walk in person somewhere and talk to somebody. That's an issue.
Yeah. Well, somebody needs to tell DHHS the pandemic is over, and it's time to get back to in-person visits to verify that these agencies are who they say that they are and that they are billing appropriately. But just make sure that if there are bad actors out there, that they're not part of the equation, not getting tax dollars, and that the folks who are doing a good job and who are providing these services to the folks that need them, they have the upside is all there, right? We cut down on any bad actors, but we ensure that the folks who are doing their job and doing it well have the funds available to them. Right now, MaineCare is a mess.
Yeah, the state has put out a notice that they were, what, $160 million shortfall or something earlier this year, and so they'd be cutting payments to these providers up to 30%.
Yeah.
Why is that happening? Why, how is this
Well,
happening in the biggest
reasons.
program, right? The biggest program the state spends money on.
Yes.
400,000 people in Maine, almost 1 in 3 Mainers are on MaineCare. We spend almost 1 in 4 state dollars on MaineCare.
Taxpayer dollars.
Taxpayer
one in four
dollars.
Taxpayer dollars.
The fact that we don't have a higher level of scrutiny here is just an affront to taxpayers and an affront to the folks who really need it. Those patients, it doesn't benefit a patient if they're being served by a fraudulent provider.
No.
So it's up to the state to make sure that those patients are protected. And if they're not doing it, not only are taxpayers getting fleeced, but these patients who actually need this help are not going to get it. And that's unacceptable.
100%. So, of course, I think folks know that the federal government has kind of stepped into the picture. We haven't seen any accountability from the Mills administration. There's no interest in making sure that these dollars are going where they should be going from the Mills administration. So the federal government has had to step in, and they have flagged in just one piece of this, they flagged $45.6 million in improper MaineCare payments to autism rehabilitative services. That means that's $46.5 million that has not gone to the right place, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about this is when the federal government is flagging this, they're saying, we're going to need our money back.
And they have.
And they have.
They have said that.
They have said, we're going to need our money back. And that means that the Maine taxpayer is now on the hook again
Yes.
to pay these funds back to the federal government.
That's right.
And so this, it cuts off at the knees the program, it cuts off at the knees the taxpayer, it cuts off at the knees the truly needy who need these services. It harms in every way possible, but I got to tell you, the taxpayer gets dinged multiple times over here.
Absolutely.
Pay back the federal government.
I mean, we're paying for the oversight, right?
Right.
We're paying for the staff to do this, and then we're paying for the program itself to be administered, and then we're also having to, whatever's left over, pay back the federal government. The state has to pay about half of this back, about half of that $45 million back, because the state conducted 0 audits. There were 0 audits on that autism service provider aspect. And so that's why there was so much fraud there. There had to be a federal audit in order to catch it because the state's not doing its job. So yeah, you're right. The taxpayers are getting hosed on multiple different levels here. The oversight on the program, it's not good.
So obviously this must be a top priority for the legislature because they want to make sure that the tax dollars, no, not the case. In fact, Nick, Lead Maine, we are gathering signatures for an initiative. We emailed folks about this today. If you're not on our list, our Lead Maine update list, you should be. If you were, you would have received a notice about this today.
That's right.
We're not going to spill all the beans here. Sign up at leadmaine.com for all the info. But suffice it to say, there's a process that Lead Maine is executing to insist that the department address this. And we were at the polls, at some polls throughout Maine, gathering signatures to that end on Tuesday. And I ran into one of my fellow legislators.
Oh, yeah?
And I said, hey.
I won't ask who.
You want to sign the petition regarding MaineCare accountability? And they said, no, thank you. It will not shock you that this is an individual on the other side of the aisle, Adam Lee from here in Auburn. I'll tell you who.
Okay.
Adam Lee from here in Auburn, who did not want to sign the petition for MaineCare accountability.
Interesting.
And there really is no interest in the Democrat majority to nip this in the bud and to be sure that Mainers' tax dollars are going where they should.
I wonder why that's the case. I mean, they're getting hammered all the time about the rising cost of living, the extra taxes they've had to increase on Mainers. 32 times in Governor Mills' term have taxes or fees been increased or expanded or
brand
brought
new,
on.
brand new taxes.
So, and then if HHS has a $160 million shortfall, they don't have to cut these providers.
Right.
Wouldn't we be interested in trying to find where some extra money are? We have verified stories of hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars being potentially diverted through MaineCare fraud. So the fact that we don't want to address this is interesting to me. You would think that folks, especially in the majority, since it's their responsibility.
Want to address it.
The state government's their responsibility. They've been in control of Augusta. The Democrats have been in control of Augusta for the last 8 years, and this is what's happened. So you'd think that they would want to clean up that record and make sure that taxpayers think that they're on their side.
Unfortunately, that is not the case. And that's why Lead Maine is having to take the lead on this.
Right.
There is a process for Maine citizens to speak up, make our voices heard, and insist that the department do their job. And so we're executing that. We'll have more to come during the month of June on this. But if you want the inside scoop, make sure you have signed up for our updates at leadmaine.com because it's a pretty exciting process.
It is. It is. Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing.
We want to make sure that you hear all about it. Nick, talk to us a little bit about, we have seen audits happen. We've seen our Democrat state auditor say that there are significant holes in MaineCare oversight. So it's not just one side of the aisle saying that this is a problem. There are a limited number of folks who are willing to be honest on the other side of the aisle and say, look, this is a problem. We need to make sure these tax dollars are going to the right place. So can you talk to us about the audit process and what that has looked like?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it was earlier this year, I think it was in March, where State Auditor Matt Dunlap, who's a Democrat running for Congress, just so happens, I mean, this is his job, is to audit state government and audit the programs. And so when they looked into the Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees MaineCare, they found several dozen inaccuracies, several dozen weaknesses in their process for audits. So, it's sort of the if there's smoke, there's fire, but they're not a firefighter. They just kind of smell the smoke, and that's what the auditor is doing here.
Hey guys, there's smoke.
Hey, it doesn't smell that great. You might want to look into this.
Yeah.
And to the extent that an auditor can say there's a problem,
yeah.
They flagged several dozen.
Which helps point again to these ghost agencies.
Yeah, and that's
and the major holes there, and the reason why we need to have in-person inspections be part of this process, both when someone is coming on board as a provider that's going to bill MaineCare, and again, during the audit process. If it seems like there's something fishy going on, then an in-person visit should be part of that process to verify that everyone is who they say they are and that they're providing the care that they say that they're providing. And so that transparency, thankfully, even our state auditor is saying we need that level of transparency and accountability.
Yeah, I think it means a lot when Matt Dunlap comes out and sort of points the finger at the Mills administration, whom he worked for many years and supported in the legislature. It is his job, and so I think it does behoove him to do his auditor job well. He fought hard to get it and to keep that auditor job. So good on him for actually looking into it and flagging these things, because it is an issue and it is an indictment of the Mills administration's culture of oversight or of lack of oversight. I mean, why wouldn't you be curious about these things? Why wouldn't you be trying to root this sort of stuff out when we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars at least on the provider level, but then we get to hundreds of millions of dollars potentially misspent on the program side.
Yeah.
Biggest line item in the state budget. There's no excuse that there should be this much funding that's unaccounted for.
Yeah. So again, we'll go over these base numbers, right? Prior to COVID, about 270,000 Mainers on MaineCare. At this point, we were up to about 400,000, and so it is the biggest line item, $1.4 billion. I keep wanting to say million because billion just sounds wrong coming out of my mouth, right?
Yeah.
$1.4 billion a year. It's the biggest line item in the Maine budget, and so we need to make sure that those dollars are being spent appropriately, and where there is waste, fraud, and abuse, root that out so that we can spare Maine taxpayers.
And serve the folks who need it
And
the
serve the
most.
folks who need
I
it the
mean,
most.
this is just
100%.
insult to injury since we've expanded Medicaid or expanded MaineCare to provide health care for folks who can work, who don't have children. The fact that we have over 80,000 of those adults who are
Yep.
of working age without dependents, who aren't disabled, who can work to pay for their own health insurance and not rely on the state program that is meant for the most vulnerable. You know, the fact that we've expanded this and then now not had the oversight, not had the safeguards in place to protect against taxpayer dollars being diverted from this program, it's insult to injury, the fact that the Mills administration has allowed this lack of oversight and transparency to occur on its watch.
So Nick, give us the one sentence explanation of exactly what a ghost agency is as we wrap things up so that folks can explain that to their friends and family. And of course, I'll remind folks, we have information about MaineCare on our website at leadmaine.com if they want to look up our one-pager. But tell us exactly in a nutshell what a ghost agency is.
Yeah, so you know it exists on paper, right? You see the name of the agency, you see the officers and everything, but it's hard to verify that it's actually doing the thing that it says it's doing.
But what would make it really easy to verify it says it's you know what it's doing?
Maybe just
it's
knocking on the
actually
door and showing up.
Absolutely.
You know, everyone's got a phone call, a phone they can answer, but not everybody is diligently working in their office. So I think the Maine Wire has found that, and I think if the HHS auditors did their job and showed up, they would find the same things, and we wouldn't be in this position we would be in.
Absolutely.
So, you know, stay tuned to our social media because we're going to be talking a lot about the ghost providers and other issues with MaineCare. So folks can always keep up with the issue there. But yeah, in a nutshell, you can see it exists on paper, but you can't really tell it exists in real life.
Richard, I see your comment. You're tired of all this in government, I'm sure the lack of accountability and transparency, just like us. And we're right there with you, but we're doing something about it.
That's
and
right.
So
That's right. You can help us.
Absolutely love to have you help us. Make sure you're signed up at leadmaine.com. Follow us on social media and tune in to the Speak Up with Laura Libby podcast. You're not going to want to miss the next one that's going to drop on this topic. And so subscribe today on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And folks, we look forward to talking a lot more about MaineCare over the next couple of months. So stay tuned. And thanks so much for joining us today.